This week wasn't too busy for game news, but it was still a good one. We saw some great releases, and there are still a bunch of events going on. Let's get started. To begin with, Electronic Arts started off the week with a giveaway for Titanfall DLC. Apparently, everything went for free. They said that this was to celebrate the game's first anniversary. Most players, however, think that it was done for the sake of defragmenting the player base. Because there were plenty of maps put out as DLC, some of the players owned at least one of those pieces of DLC, but not necessarily all free. This had the bad effect of dividing up the player base. So while it might not have been an easy decision on the part of EA to just give away all that DLC for free, in the end it's the one that probably made the most business sense. While we're talking Titanfall, the very next day, Titanfall 2 was announced for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Right now, it seems that we're right in the middle of convention season, as right now in London, EGX Res is happening. In case you've not heard of it, EGX Res is yet another gaming convention where folks play games early, attend awesome panels, and meet developers. Incidentally, they're partnered with BAFTA, which just held the British Academy Games Awards a couple days ago. During the 2015 BAFTA Game Awards, Destiny took home Game of the Year, Valiant Hearts won for Best Original Property, Never Alone won for Best Debut Game, and Transistor was inexplicably snubbed from everything, including music, which was kind of confusing. Besides some kind of odd choices, however, the BAFTA Game Awards were definitely a classy affair. They're the closest, in my opinion, to the Oscars of gaming.
Anna, my bravest of warriors across the Western Front, saving the mountain of wounded without firing a shot.
You might have heard of This War of Mine. Developed by 11-bit studios, it's a rather unusual take on the war game. You see, in This War of Mine, you don't play as a soldier. Rather, you have some command over a group of civilians. Your goal is simply to survive. It's a rather complex game with plenty of moral choices to be had. Justin Eccles reviewed the game for Blackman and Robin.com, and he absolutely loved it, in a heartbreaking sort of way. The reason we bring this up is because 11-bit Studios has just released a new piece of DLC for This War of Mine. This DLC sells for 3 different prices: 99 cents, $9.99, and $19.99. The DLC adds pieces of artwork and inserts them into the game world. It is worth noting that all 3 monetary tiers of the DLC contain the very same content. The reason that there are 3 tiers are so that you can give as much money as you like to charity. The money goes to a charity called War Child. Now, War Child brings help to children who are living in conflict zones around the world. If you own This War of Mine, it's absolutely worth picking up this DLC. It'll make the game look a little bit better, and you'll also be helping kids around the globe. This week, we had an unusual number of news pieces about space games. To begin with, Star Citizen is going to be over 100 gigabytes once it's finished. In case you've not heard of Star Citizen, all you need to know is that it's a space game in the vein of something like Elite Dangerous or the X series. However, it's very advanced. What the developers of Star Citizen aim to do is to create a real world, well, a real galaxy, in which you really are Star Citizen and you can do just about anything. The game is extremely ambitious and raised several $1 million on Kickstarter. However, that's not the end of it. The game is still making money with pre-orders. People are currently enjoying an early version of the game, and there's really no telling what new features Robert Space is going to unveil for the game next week. That isn't to say I have any hot tips on what's going on with Star Citizen, but at this point, every new announcement regarding the game almost reads like a parody. As I've said before, it's an incredibly ambitious project, and I have high hopes for it. Just, I'm not sure of when it'll be done. That said, the 100 gigabyte figure is certainly believable. In other space game news, the significantly less ambitious game Sid Meier's Starships was released this week for iPad, Windows, and OS X. While it met with some critical praise, fans are levying complaints against Starships. Most of the complaints seem to be that the game, which is a spin-off of Civilization, isn't very much like Civilization. This seems to be the result of people walking into the game expecting one thing, but not really paying attention to the fine print. That said, from what I've heard, Starships is a good game for what it is. If you're looking for a space strategy game that's real-time instead of turn-based, you might want to take a look at Ethereum. A fresh gameplay video has just been released for this upcoming game, which now has a release date of March 25th, 2015. While I've not played it, so I can't really comment on what it's like, I have to say it definitely looks promising. Besides the gameplay, which in itself looks interesting, the visual style itself is absolutely gorgeous.
And the Vectides, fighting among the 6 gestation planets home to the Ethereum: Serenade, Pylo, Mars, Desta Fatalis, Arctis, and Resurgence.
If you're into 4X games, you might want to check out Star Drive. A fresh gameplay trailer has just been unveiled for Star Drive 2. It's coming out on April 9, 2015 to PC, and it looks really good. If you enjoyed Endless Space, the original Star Drive, or perhaps Sid Meier's Civilization Beyond Earth, this is definitely up your alley. Our final bit of space gaming news is that the X series is currently having a free weekend on Steam. The X games are an awful lot like Free Space or Wing Commander. You can fly around the galaxy doing whatever you want. I played a bit of X-Free, Terran Conflict, on the recommendation of some of the players, and I have to say, it really is quite fun. Even though I admit I was pretty terrible at the game, the controls felt very intuitive. While the user interface is kind of intimidating to look at, I got the hang of things very quickly. I would definitely recommend checking this out if it seems to be your sort of thing. If you'd much rather keep your feet on the ground, you might be pleased to know that Cities Skylines has just been released. It's a city building game that got great reception from both the press and players. Excitingly enough, Cities Skylines already has a very active modding community. One of the mods that's already available is a first-person mod that allows you to zoom in real close into your city and experience it as a citizen. Perhaps somebody with a bit of ambition will test out this mod in virtual reality. That would be something worth seeing. Besides its being a critical success, Cities Skyline also managed to sell 250,000 copies on launch day. Those sorts of numbers are nothing to sneeze at. As I've said before, and will probably one day have to say again, Cities Skyline has absolutely nothing to do with the previously released Cities XXL. Cities XXL is a bit of a catastrophe. You see, Cities XXL was supposed to be the sequel to Cities XL. However, it adds absolutely nothing new to the game. Well, perhaps I'm exaggerating a little bit. Cities XXL does add a slightly new color to the user interface. It also adds an extra X into the name of the game. If you like games that are not just XL, but XXL, get Cities XXL. Who am I kidding? Don't get Cities XXL. It's a mistake. I don't usually tell people not to get games, especially those that I've not played. But by purchasing Cities XXL, you're helping set a bad precedent in the gaming industry. A developer should not be able to get away with a 2-bit scam of slightly changing a couple minor aspects of a game and repackaging it with a new name. That's bad business, and it's nothing I can support. That said, Cities Skyline is from somebody else entirely, and from what I've been hearing, it harkens back to the good old days of SimCity, back before the game was dumbed down, always online, and had several forced features that nobody really wanted. If you're looking for something a lot more fantastical, Ori and the Blind Forest has just been released for the Xbox One and PC. It's a super cute Metroidvania platformer that seems to draw inspiration from the works of Studio Ghibli. Thus far, it has gotten great reception from both fans and press. Everybody says that it's a rather intense, emotional experience. I'll probably wind up getting my hands on it sometime soon. If you're more of a fantasy traditionalist, you'll be pleased to know that Dungeon Defenders 2 has just received the Foundation Part 2 update. This update adds new weapons, improves the game's balance, and adds inventory management, along with the hard mode. I had a pretty good time with the original Dungeon Defenders. It's a good take on the 3D tower defense action game category. It's really a game that's meant for co-op, so if you have friends to play it with, I absolutely recommend checking it out. Now, if you're looking for something very different out of an FPS, you'll want to check out Lovely Planet. Now, Lovely Planet came out to PC last year. I played it, and it's very different. In the game, you have a bow and arrow, and your enemies are bizarre. Like, geometric shapes bizarre. Candy-colored geometric shapes bizarre. The whole affair is, in a word, bizarre. Don't let that put you off from the game, however, as it's very fun. It's almost like a first-person time trial Super Meat Boy. Your goal is to get from point X to point Y as quickly as you can without being crushed to death by a giant apple. The game is currently available on Mac, PC, and Linux, but it's just been announced that Lovely Planet is coming to the Xbox One summer of 2015. While we're talking about games that are kinda weird, one thing that I got an email for was a mech-themed ARPG called Damascus Gear, Operation Tokyo. It's coming to the PlayStation Vita, and it's a story about mecha going wild and turning on humans at the end of a war. I'm not sure why, but there's something about the premise that sounds incredibly unusual. I mean, the idea of giant robots turning on people isn't exactly original, but there's something about the execution that strikes me as a little bit strange. While it's not the most exciting thing I've seen all week, I definitely thought it warranted a mention. Right now, the Indiegogo is live for Titanic, Honor, and Glory. Titanic, Honor, and Glory is a rather ambitious project that looks to recreate the entire Titanic in full detail and authenticity, from the voyage to the sinking. Titanic, Honor, and Glory is a sort of interactive museum. Its aim is to take you all the way back to 1912 in order to experience life aboard that ship. In the game, you'll be playing as Owen Robert Morgan, a 23-year-old American and Oxford University grad who lived in Britain. He was heading to meet an old friend when he discovered that there's some sort of sinister international crime going on behind the scenes. After doing a little bit of private investigating, he nearly gets himself arrested, and he has to now do everything he can to protect his freedom and find out who the real culprit is. So this incredibly ambitious project has a goal of $250,000. Whether or not they'll make $250,000 on Indiegogo by the time the campaign closes on April 21st remains to be seen. That said, the work that's been done on the game thus far is very promising. While the game will have a story mode in which you play as Owen Morgan, the developers also have plans for a free roam mode in which you can roam around the Titanic doing whatever you want. You see, the reason for their Indiegogo is because they're looking to expand their team and hire more voice actors, technicians, programmers, and artists. As you may have guessed, all these things cost money. If you'd like to check out their Indiegogo, or just the project in general, you'll want to check out TitanicHG.com. There you can get more information about the project and what their goals are. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Are you having problems with the IRS? Our trained professionals here at Wallen Associates have over 30 years experience helping individuals and businesses solve their tax problems.
Having tax issues, it's very scary. I was worried that we would lose our house. When I called Wallen Associates, they were able to meet with me in person, and I never had to talk to the IRS again.
Call now for a free consultation. We'll meet with you in person, face-to-face, at a local office near you.
Call now, 1-800-745-1210. We
As
solve
mentioned
tax
before,
problems.
this really does seem to be convention season. While John Carmack was just talking about mobile VR during GDC last week, this week, Oculus VR held a panel during South by Southwest. They didn't have anything new to announce, or so they claimed. However, on the sly, they let it slip that the Crescent Bay Oculus prototype has 2 screens instead of just 1. They realized that this would really improve visual acuity, and so it's probably going to make its way into the final consumer version of the product, which we still aren't exactly sure when it's coming out. When asked if the news of Valve's partnership with HTC has put any pressure on Oculus VR, Mitchell said that our team just wants to launch this thing as soon as we possibly can, with no compromises. Personally speaking, I'm happy that the Oculus Rift is taking so long because it means that we're going to get the very best product when it comes out, whenever it comes out. Well, that's it for this week's game news. Be sure to follow at Blackman and Robin for all the latest reviews, previews, and interviews. And follow me at Jordan Cameron for my other views. Finally, we have another awesome pixel art cartoon from YouTuber Damo VR. This time, it's Final VR Fantastic. As you might guess, it parodies current events in virtual reality gaming and Final Fantasy VI. Enjoy!
I drink your milkshake.